Ever since I was a young and I was into rapping 20 years later and I'm still here yapping. Guess I got so much to say, so I'm trying to educate all of us. I hope together we can elevate. Time flies and our life is moving so fast. What's the forecast? Good vibes to be broadcast. So come and chill with me as we let the bad vibes blow past. This is Shout Out Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Shoutout Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I just want to share something with you guys, the audience. The analytics will pop up they'll pop up on the screen. But this is analytics from our YouTube channel. So this is something I found interesting and I just wanted to share with you guys. First of all, you can see the female and male viewership is pretty much equal. Female are at 55, male at 45. It keeps changing every week, but more or less we have equal viewership, so we're happy with that. But what piqued my interest was when we looked at the age demographics. As you can see, let's start with the smaller percentage, 13 to 17 year old. Just not surprisingly, only 0.6%, and I'm sure most of them will be my nephews and niece. But the elder folks, it's nice to see a few of them watching the podcast, and I get pictures and messages from friends and cousins who say their mom's watching the show or their dad, and that's nice. But the main thing that I wanted to focus on was the age bracket from 18 years to 44 years. So that's the bulk. You can see that makes up close to 90% of the viewership. You, the audience, 90% of you guys are in that age bracket where it's 18 to 44. And why I want to mention this is because our podcast, besides trying to promote Nagas and letting you hear their story, besides bringing in positive vibes and sending out positive messages, one of our main goals is also to try and spark a change within our land and within our people through conversation. So the fact that 90% of the audience is in that age bracket where you guys, some of you are already in a position where you can effect change and in leadership roles, and also for the next 2 decades, these are you guys are the ones who will be in that position to make change and be in leadership roles. So that's just a nice thing that I wanted to share with you guys. Back to the show and the man of the hour. He's actually, I've never met him before prior to this. We are just friends on social media, and I'm happy that I got to meet him through that. Very interesting character. He plays the guitar. He's a young father, and more importantly, he's one of the special few who's cracked the UPSC exam and currently serving as Joint Commissioner for Central GST based in Dimapur right now. So welcome, Sashi Wapang. Sashi, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Asalie.
Just starting off with that social media thing, because now we're sort of legit friends on social media, because Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything, we're following each other and all that. So what's your whole take on social media, just generally?
Social media, it's something which you can't avoid these days, right, because if you want to stay in touch with people, that's the place to go to. But at the same time, be it the government, be it a private entrepreneur, or be it someone who's baking cakes during the lockdown, you need that place, because now it's an online marketplace. Correct. Thrift stores, just social media, what it was initially just staying in touch with friends. Right, I think that's just one of the many ways. Right. So it's a place where I think everyone needs to be, but at the same time, maybe with some checks and balances. Right.
I keep saying this, that social media is, right, it's so huge. It's such a big part of our lives, whether you want it to be or not. Right. And I guess the most important thing, like you said, the checks and balances is knowing how much time to spend on it, what purpose are you, using it for. Right. And I think if we get that down, then it's a great advantage to, have social media on your side. You being a young parent, we're about the same age. You have 2 sons, right?
Yes.
And both very young. One is
2.5 and one is just 8 months.
8 months, right? So how was that experience? Because I'm also a young father and wanted to just know your side of the story, especially because you've been raising them throughout, like, the past year and a half was the pandemic issue, like, so how's that been?
Well, this pandemic, of course, for many people it's been a difficult period, but for me and my family, and considering the fact that I have small kids, it's been a blessing in disguise, because I really got to spend a lot of time with them.
Okay.
And before all this, I was in Calcutta and my family were here. So many times that issue of, traveling back and forth, spending a few days a month together. But now during this period, I really got time to spend with them, and also my own thoughts about like trying to be a hands-on father,
Correct.
be involved in every little thing. To some extent, I've been able to do that. So I feel happy about it.
Yeah, so then you're one of the lucky ones. The pandemic has been a blessing in disguise for you. And just besides that, the family aspect of it, what about professionally? How has it been, like, your work?
It's been a period where, of course, work-wise, being in the revenue service, it's been a time where we've seen, obviously, because of the slowdown in everything, the economy taking a hit, and that aspect was there. But one thing which I found amazing was how the central government went for this thing called electronic office, wherein we shifted our work into a software-based e-office. So the same thing that you do on file is being done online. And somehow this came in just at the time when the first lockdown happened. And they really pushed us to get it, rolled out. And somehow that has actually helped keep the office going, because, work from home in the private sector, maybe it works somehow, but many times when it's paperwork and government, work from home can be difficult to just hit the ground running.
Yes.
But at least for us, somehow that worked out, and it was a learning experience. But I think,
how was that? Because I'm sure that must have been quite like a Herculean task, trying to push that rollout of the new,
Yes, it still is a process that's going on. I mean, percentage-wise, probably we are 70-80% only migrated, because every single document that was there earlier, you have to scan and bring it up. But this system actually brings a lot of transparency, because now every single file, whatever I write, remains there. How much time the file was with me, anyone can see, at any point in time, I can see how many files are moving where in the office, who's sitting over a file, who's been passing files. Statistics wise, and someone sitting in Delhi can see what's happening, in different parts of the country.
So transparency wise, definitely that's like stepping up the game, right? And just on this pandemic thing, don't you feel like, I was just thinking about this the other day, the pandemic is like our story to tell. Like how our grandparents had the war to talk about the story and all. It's like when we're like grandparents and all, this will be a great story to tell.
Right.
What have you taken away from it? Like you said, definitely you got to spend much more time with your family, which was a blessing. But besides that, what is like your biggest takeaways from the whole pandemic?
I just before this whole pandemic and before coming back to Nagaland, I was posted in a place which was quite heavy in terms of the work and the hours that I put in, and I was giving all of myself there. So during this pandemic, just giving time for myself, I mean, of course with the family, but even for myself, like selfishly spending time and just doing things that I love, actually.
Playing the guitar.
Because I just found that if I spend 2-3 hours during the weekend, for a long time, my wife and me, for her, like the guitar was something I could do on the side. And, I mean, for her, listening to music, she can do and do something. It's a background thing. Many times for me, like when I listen. Sometimes I'm actually reading the lyrics and listening. So with that kind of thing, I while playing the guitar also, if I can spend an hour or two, so that's like meditation for me in a sense, and I just come out refreshed, and it charges me for the week that's to come. So I think I realized that that kind of balance, it works for me. So
putting some of your personal interests also like up the priority list instead of always,
right.
Not to be selfish or anything, but it is important. I like what you said about like how playing the guitar is some sort of like a meditation for you also. And I say this also, like, meditation for us can be in any form, any manner.
Yes.
Just the process is the important thing.
Yes.
If it helps you get through that, then you're
very
meditating.
much. For some,
basically.
it could be gardening.
Exactly.
In fact, a bike ride. Painter. Anything that really refreshes you.
Right. We do the shout outs. So I'll start off the shout out. Today's shout out is it's a little selfish because it's part of what I do also. But my company Infinity Inc. is running a program called Infinity Next, and we have it's an artist development program. So a year-long course where we groom and develop artists, wholesome, like all-around development with styling, songwriting, song production, etc. And so it's a program that's supported by TAFMA also. Shout out to TAFMA. But this shout out is for the 6 young artists that we have on Infinity Next, and I just want to call out all their names, and you guys can check them out. They're really talented artists, by no means beginners. They already, some of them have already got their originals and music videos out also. So they are Joshua, Kendra, Rilo, Sarah, Temsa, and Ikato. So these are the 6 artists that we have under Infinity Next, and very talented people. And also, I'm going to cheat today and give one more quick shout out. The Basics page on Instagram, they just got in touch with us, and we're very grateful that you guys gave us a shout out on your page, and you should check them out. They've been promoting people along the lines of the shout out podcast, just about promoting Nagas doing whatever. So the Basics page on Instagram, you can check that out too.
Me?
Yeah.
Right. Shout out to a small Instagram page that's managed by a school-going girl. It's a cosmetics line, I think lip care. But why I want to give a shout out is in a place that values, government jobs over and above everything else, and wherein a business venture is often looked at as something like a last resort when things don't work out. But to see someone from this generation take up like a business when still in school, for me, I think that shows a shift in our thinking from just merely, government job and all that into, just think about the things that she'll learn just outside of school also, managing a small business at that age, Right. So the name of the page is Qra, Cura, and I guess you'll show it.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that up. That's nice. Shout outs. I think this is it's a fun thing, but also like I keep saying, I like that you shouted out Qra. Is it pronounced Qra?
By the way, just in terms of logistics, since it's a school-going girl, she must be balancing school and so
it'll be tough.
It'll be tough to handle a huge load just in case. But shout out because of that reason.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back all the way like we do with all the other guests. Your childhood. Let's take us back to your childhood. How it was growing up. You told me you were born in Kohima, right?
I was born in Mokokchung.
Oh, sorry, Mokokchung. Right.
We've lived in Kohima since a long time back. So, but like you, I've been a boarding school product. I've started boarding school from the pretty young age, class 2. From class 2 onwards,
exactly
I was
the same.
Darjeeling. So most of the year we are away in boarding school, and maybe 3 months. The winter vacations was when I was home. Basically born and brought up in Chanmari in Kohima. We lived in one of the government quarters there in Chanmari, but most of my memories are Darjeeling because class 2 to 12, and in between for 2 years I did come back and study in Chanmari, but then I went back to the same school and graduated from there.
So talk to us about that, because me personally, I've heard a lot of good things about the schools in Darjeeling, so tell us about that.
Well, actually, it started with my mom. She did her college from Lady Keen in Shillong. And this is probably in the early 70s, when she was doing her college, she saw this choir that had come from Darjeeling. She was really impressed by that, a mix of boys and girls, and she made a mental note that I'm going to send my kids to that school. And later on, when the time came, there were other Naga families also going there, and then we ended up there. So me, my sister, and brother, 3 of us. The youngest one didn't. She chose not to join us there, but 3 of us, we spent a good 10 years there in Darjeeling.
How do you think that's affected your sort of like upbringing? Because like you said, me also, 2nd grade I was shipped off to boarding school in Mussoorie, right? So we spent like the good part of our childhood and growing up, like, like how many months were you at home for, like vacations? Ours was like 4 months.
Yeah, end of November and then leave by March. So 3.5 months.
And summers you wouldn't come?
No summer holiday. I mean, it would be too short to actually come
for a
week
proper,
or so. Yeah.
Ours was close to 4 months, like summer to winter too. But yeah, but the fact that we've spent so much time there most of our childhood, how do you think that, if you can give a comparison maybe to someone like who's brought up in Nagaland?
If you ask me whether I'll send my kid also to boarding school to get the same, experience, what I'll say is perhaps maybe not at a very young age.
A little later.
A little later, because, of course, back then, maybe you didn't have as many good institutions in Nagaland, which was one of the factors also.
Definitely.
Now there are a lot more schools which offer just beyond the classroom kind of education, which was one of the reasons why our parents chose to send us there, because co-curricular activities, bigger, wholesome development.
Right.
So many schools now. So I'll choose to send them to one of the schools in Nagaland. But at the same time, some of the good things that we picked up, like a certain sense of independence, I think early on was there. Looking out for my brothers and sisters, looking out for myself, that is something which I would like my sons to also experience. So maybe higher classes, 7, 8 or something that, boarding school life.
I'm definitely on you with that one. I think, we're lucky nowadays to have such great schools in and around, Dimapur, Kohima. And that was maybe one of the main reasons why our parents or other parents wanted to send their kids out. Now that we have this luxury, I don't think it's necessary to ship them off so early as 2nd grade, class 2 or whatever. But yeah, we're lucky nowadays. What about your, like, your journey through schooling? What was your mind state like? Were you music, or were you studious? Were you leaning towards sports? What was? Who was Sashi?
I was good in academics till class 10. I mean, of course, music was there, but and sports, maybe I'm not school team material, but B team, My brother was the sports guy. So, but class 11, 12, till class 10, I was pretty good in studies. 11, 12, suddenly music took, I became a bit more dreamy. I'm writing bands' names at the back of my exercise book, learning how Iron Maiden or Metallica is written. So, yeah, till class 10, a good student. But 11, 12, I think I explored a little bit more of the arts and this kind of thing, became a little more dreamy. But when I look back, I have very fond memories of Darjeeling. I think the presently, though, sadly, because of the issues that are plaguing
the political situation,
somehow the education there has suffered a bit, with many of the people having to leave the schools, and also I think the good teachers also because of the situation.
Right.
Yeah, but I have very fond memories of Darjeeling.
It's very evident that you are very proud of it also. What was, because we will get into your journey with the whole UPSC, your examinations and all, but what were you thinking about during your, the 11th, 12th age, or
it's, if someone had asked me when I was in junior school, jet fighter pilot was my aim in life. Without much idea what happens
just
to
like
it, jet fighter pilot. But somehow, I think along the way, class 11, 12, reading Robin Cook novels and all, I wanted to be a doctor sometimes. Or reading a book which my English teacher actually gave me, The Fountainhead, Ayn Rand. So architecture, and though I had no gift. So till I think class 12, I didn't really have that. I want to be particular into this. And my dad is an engineer. So when the time came for college, I also took up an engineering degree.
Okay, you went into engineering,
Yes,
thinking that that's where you wanted to. Okay. So when did that come into the picture? You getting into competitive, like
I think that came, of course, throughout. That kind of conversation might have been there. I had some idea, IAS officer, all that, but it wasn't really my aim in life. But final year of college, I think, is when, of course, that was also because of the fact that I had to think about what next. While most of my friends were going down the MBA way, right, the CAT, or getting placed in companies and starting work. So at that time, of course, college was another thing where music, I mean, if you ask me about college days, music
was still prominent.
Yes, very prominent, because I ended up playing in a college band, and we were really,
I know. I have one story to share about this. Anyway,
we're just going around almost every weekend, especially during the festival season, where inter-college festivals.
Right.
Around South India, Mumbai, Mysore, Bangalore, all these places we used to play, and in fact, in many of these places, we won prize money as well. So for me, it was a big thing, like college days and music. So only around the final year, of course, along with that, my studies suffered, because spending so much time in music that I got some back papers also, which I had to clear on time.
One second. But did you ever give it a serious thought, music? Or was it always just...
See, my bandmates, actually, amongst the four of us, they thought I would be the guy going into music, because for them, a Northeast guy, it comes so naturally and all that, Whereas I would compare myself to the Northeast guys and find myself quite average, I mean, I didn't find myself that extraordinary. I'm just playing steadily, but nothing, extra. So at no point did I actually think
that,
about
like,
it as
a
And I knew, I mean, along the way, it'll still be a part of my life, but not something from where I'll, full time.
Right. So let's get into this, because there's something that I think a lot of people will connect to, especially since we have, like, as you know, thousands of aspirants every year from our state, trying to clear either whether it's the NPSC, UPSC, competitive exams and such. So I think this will be a very relevant talk, and like we discussed, I told you also, and even I'm happy that you are also of that same feeling, that you don't want to be giving, like, generic advice, that the things that people who have cleared the exams always usually tend to give that same talk, and we'll get to that in a bit. But the beginning of your journey, I want to know, like, when did it actually sink in that, like, you're serious about this? Was it the role that your parents played? How much was it of, from your parents and from your own self? And just break it down, that initial part.
Yes, my parents did have I mean, my dad especially would keep encouraging and tell me that a life in public service is something which, and especially the Naga way of doing things also, we are so giving back to the community,
Right.
So that was one of the factors. But it was, like I was saying, during the last phase of college when I decided that I'll give this a shot. And initially, after graduating, I came back home to Nagaland, and I was working for around a year as a lecturer in a college in Mokokchung.
Okay.
And my idea was that I'll take independence from my parents, as in I keep earning some salary, and I'll study on the side. But somehow, very quickly, I realized that I couldn't manage to do both things. So I quit that, and I landed up in Delhi. This is around, I think, 2005. I graduated in 2004. 2005, I ended up in Delhi. And
for coaching, obviously.
Coaching, yeah. The first time I wrote it, I was still, like, hanging out with my friends, because I had a lot of friends from college and from back home who were in Delhi, and it was my first time in Delhi also.
Okay.
So I wrote the prelims and I cleared it. So I was taking coaching and writing the exam, but soon I realized that
that's not happening.
It's not happening. I mean, prelims I must have cleared like that, but this exam demanded more out of me. So by the way, I got through in my third attempt. So as each attempt went, one of the things I realized was this exam requires all of me, in the sense I had to cut my social circles. I actually stopped hanging out with my friends. I had to literally go inside a cave.
Right.
So when you start doing that, then you also paying enough, giving enough of yourself to the exam, which is one of the things I find many people who go for these coaching classes, we are unable to do, because we are so caught up with our social obligations.
Right. I think that is something. Yeah, please. I think that is something that I've noticed, and that's been something that's been very clear, that a lot of people are very smart and intelligent, but when it comes to, like you said, and the stories that we've heard from other people who have cleared it also, is that the commitment level is on another level. Like, you can't just be smart. That's not enough. You can't just be, you have to, I don't know if that's the only case, but like you're saying, go in a cave and literally, spend all your time on and focus on trying to clear it.
For me, what I used to do was, each time I felt low in terms of motivation, I would see my colleagues who, especially from UP and Bihar, these guys would be staying in like a one single room with a mattress and table and books, and putting themselves, whereas us Nagas, we are still having our social life and doing that, which difficult to get there with that. One of the things that I tell people is that before getting into it, it's important to know how many people are writing the exam, in terms of, don't do it just because your parents have asked you to or everyone else is doing it. Get an idea about the exam. So, for example, 2019, both the NPSC and UPSC, 2019, the number of people writing NPSC, around 15,000 people wrote NPSC for 45 posts. And among these 45, ESC, DSP, though, it's not, it's probably 8 of them. Right. And if you come to UPSC, the numbers are even more mind-boggling. 2019, 8 lakh people applied for 800 jobs, and out of 800 IAS, and that'll be less.
Again, that'll
also,
just be a handful.
So if you look at the chances of getting through, it just comes down. 1 in every 1,000 people who writes would get through for UPSC, and for NPSC maybe 1 in every 300. So understand these things.
Right.
You're going to be fighting it out with a lot of people, so you really have to up your game if you want to get there, right?
It's not easy, right? Because like a lot of people try. I've seen them try. They're smart people, and it's not like they're not trying also. But to be like the stories that I've heard, and now you're sharing your story also. Like the people who have cleared it, it takes a whole. I'm repeating myself, but just the next level of commitment. And
I'll just
this is just one thing quickly about because the numbers thing that you brought up, I really wanted to touch on this. Is that I can't repeat the exact numbers that you said, but it's mind-boggling. And if you are a smart enough student, then you'd realize the probabilities also of the chances, and not to put yourself down like that, but be realistic also and understand.
I have seen that many times. Someone I thought would get through, a smart guy, he didn't, and someone more average has gotten through also. So consistency becomes one of the important things, not just flashes of brilliance.
Right.
Friends I thought who would get in, they wrote, and then he gave up within 1-2 years and did something else. If you are in it, you have to be in it for the long run, which means at least See, basically it takes at least 1 year to cover. The coaching cycle is 1 year to cover the subject and finish it. And then you write the first attempt, right? So if it works out, fine. But in most cases, it doesn't.
Of course.
So you have to give in second or, invest at least 3 years. There's a lot of money because this coaching,
of course,
it's almost an industry. Back during my time, 2005-06, I think 20,000 was the rate for like a coaching in one subject. These days, I hear it's above 1 lakh also, right? And the stay expenses, because you'll be staying in Delhi, where, one of the things which I did was I tried to stay in a colony where I didn't know people, and close to my coaching place. Because again, going back to Delhi, I have a lot of friends to catch up with. Anonymously I existed, just go to class, come back,
Smart move.
And after the first year got over, most people come back home with the books and everything. But like I told you, I saw that I needed to really cut down on my social circle. So I decided to stay back. And what I did was, in the Delhi summer, and no AC also, living on student budget. So we looked for libraries. And in Connaught Place, we found 2 libraries, British Library and American Center. British Library, I think there was some fee to get in, but we used to go to the American Library. And you can imagine, the library also, it's a place where you go and everyone else is serious. So, so me and a friend who cracked it together, Mijito, so we used to go to the libraries and spend the day there, and then come back in the evenings. So I have one story to tell here. Mij and me, we would go spend the whole day and come back. So in the evenings, we used to pass this Subway, the sandwich place, right?
Right.
So Subway had this thing, sub of the day, right? So even then, I think the cost of one Subway sandwich was probably 120, 130 bucks, like BLT or chicken teriyaki, all these things. But sub of the day is when for 40 bucks in specific days of the week, you can get and on that budget, this is a treat for us. So the very first time we went to Subway, so Mij and me walk in and 2 subs of the day, please, na. And the guy who's making it extra meat chahiye? Haan, dal dijiye. Extra. He asked for, you want to put this extra? We said, yes. And then when the bill came, obviously all the extra things are charged for, And we ended up paying the same amount we would have paid for. Anyway, that's a side story. But we used to keep going to these libraries and spend our time studying, right? One more thing which I think is important for guys who go there, it's good to have a group that studies together. And this I'm talking about the second year that I was there. Because first year you're going to class, a cycle is there. And a routine is important for this, right? It helps you study, it gives you motivation. But the second year when it's only books and you, that's when you can slide. What me and a couple of friends did was we formed a group. So there was 3 people and we used to have group discussions. So what happens in group discussions is you'll have different backgrounds, right? I mean, you may be from an engineering, someone a doctor, someone economy. So when I get explained an economic theory from a friend, I remember that much more than trying to study it from a book, right? So that's how we helped each other. And also just a piece of advice for Naga guys, don't make it an all Naga group, because for us, when the 2 Naga guys started getting lazy, we depended on the Tamilian to really push us. So here, shout out to my 2 friends, Mijito, who got into the foreign service and he's now in New York, and Vijuvin, who's in the railway service. He's from Tamil Nadu and he's also posted down there. So
you guys all cleared it at the same year?
I cleared it 1 year before them and 2 of them after.
All right. One thing you touched on, but that's a nice advice, that finding a good peer group, to encourage each other, also learn of each other. And like you said, if they're coming from different backgrounds, it makes it much easier to
you have to be like-minded in a certain sense.
Right. And I wanted to ask you this. You tweeted recently, and then I found this interesting also, because I believe in that first let me get one thing on the record. I want to say this because I have on previous episodes talked a lot about the government job and how it's being put up too much on a pedestal. And it's no knock to the government job itself, but the way that the situation has, happened in Nagaland, especially in regards to Nagaland, how it's been, become, we've like put it up on a pedestal so high, and there's so much pressure from, it's changing, but the parental pressure was there, the societal pressure was there, what post did he get, what not, right? So it's changing, but that's the issue I had, and not more with the job. Obviously, it's a very well respected job. But in regards to the tweet that you put out saying that, I'm obviously going to paraphrase, but take time or set time and know how much time you're going to give for this. So I want to ask you, like, what is, in your opinion, what would be a good time frame, and like if you exceed that limit, then it's better you get on with something else. And
I think it's important to know when to quit for someone who is getting into writing the civil service exams, be it NPSC or UPSC. Firstly, it takes a year to prepare, so 1 year goes there.
Yeah.
But if you're serious about it, I think if by the third or fourth attempt you don't clear the prelims, that is the first stage.
Right.
Then I would advise them to,
just pull out.
Yeah, there are things beyond UPSC. There's life beyond UPSC, and if you hang on there for longer than that and you're still not getting through, then there'll be a lot of
losing out on opportunities that you could have been. Yeah.
But of course, if someone passes the prelims at least, then I would encourage them to keep going, because at some point the breakthrough does come if you keep going at it.
So you don't think that there should be a certain, like, for someone who's been clearing prelims on a regular basis but not trying to get it through? Okay, actually, wait, cut that. I want to ask you on this, because you said you cleared it in 3 years.
Yeah.
And each year you progressed one level.
Yes.
The first year was the prelims, then you cleared the mains, right? So tell us of that journey and how that progression happened. How do you think it happened? Why were you getting, with every year able to go the next step further and eventually clear the exams?
The first time that I wrote it, I was getting familiar with the subjects as well, I think, because I took up new subjects. Though I passed out of engineering,
right?
I took up geography and public administration as my subjects. So it took some time to get used to it. But like I was saying, I spent time over and above the preparation, which were distractions for me. And many times with the preparation, a lot of repetition is required. Some people get stuck with which is the best coaching institute, which is the best book, But what I've learned is that you stick to one of the standards. On the net or through advice, plenty available. You find a standard book, and better to read the one book 3 times than to read three different books once, right? So that's what kept happening in the second and third time, And each time you read it, there's a little more clarity, there's ability to remember it and also use it in the right place while writing the exam. So a lot of consistency in keeping on going through.
I don't want to say this because it makes it sound like I'm saying that it looks easy, but you made it look easy in the sense with each year you progress one step. But I know there would have been so many challenges. So
no, I'll tell you frankly, by the third attempt, there were nights when I couldn't sleep because I was scared. I mean, I'd wake up in cold sweat thinking that I have put everything into this.
What if it doesn't
work out? Because the engineering bridge, I mean,
that's gone.
All my friends have already moved on, either doing a master's or MBA or working.
Right.
Whereas I'm there, in Delhi, in this room, just at night thinking. So that's when I think, as the attempts went, accepting the fact that there's a power above you, and because it's so funny that the first time I was so dependent on myself, but each time it went, my efforts, no doubt, it kept improving. But the understanding that, there is something over and above which shapes our ends. I'm going to quote like Shakespeare even. Nice. There is a divinity that shapes our ends, which is true even for the person who didn't get through and the one who got,
100%.
See, geography, when I studied geography, this is in relation to you talking about people who don't get through, and
Right.
me finding friends who were smarter than me who didn't get through. Somehow in geography, while studying about the Indian monsoons, you come across the term the vagaries of the monsoons, which is basically the fact that the monsoons are so unpredictable.
Right.
Some years, somewhere there are floods. In the same time, some part of the country it's dry,
Droughts.
droughts. So even with the UPSC, you have to accept the fact that sometimes there's a plan above, and if it is meant to be, it will be. If it is not meant to be, so you have to accept that at a certain point.
So anyway, congratulations, because what you did is no easy task, and very few people from Nagaland, I'm talking about compared to the numbers of people that try, have been able to clear this exam. So I want to get into your job, your actual job. So as soon as you cleared your exams, you were telling me that close to 2 years, 18 months,
1.5 years of training.
1.5 years of training. How was that whole experience like?
For me, training was again a very enjoyable period, because we got to travel almost the length and breadth of the country, and in fact had some exposure to travel outside as well. Basically, when we pass the exam, we are still students,
Right.
So to make a person from a student into an officer, the knowledge part as well as some sort of officer-like qualities, OLQ they call it. Okay. So they try and imbibe these kind of things. Of course, many people take the classroom teaching in their own way, but the on-the-job training where you actually visit offices across the country, that was good. I spent some of the good visits were, I think I spent around 2 months in Kerala, in Cochin, going to the customs office there. So every day we used to go by that boat, pay $2 to travel through the backwaters and reach the customs office. That was a good memory. And we also have exposure trips to different formations. For example, we went to the army base there in Bikaner in Rajasthan. And there I remember it was during the World Cup. Which year was this? 2010 or 11 Cricket World Cup. And we were spending a week there in Bikaner, and the army guys, they told we used to have some sort of exposure or classes during the day. But that day India and Australia were having the match in the evening, and most of the guys wanted to watch that match. But then the army guys had called us for dinner. Then we were a bit like we want to watch that match. So but they are our hosts and we can't disappoint them, so we went. And as we entered the army thing, we were really happy to see that put this big screen, and a bar. So that was an unforgettable night watching India and Australia in the desert.
Well, just going back a little bit, because I forgot to talk about this part. IRS, you're IRS obviously, but that was not your, like, you told me that obviously you weren't even thinking about IRS, right?
Yes.
Like, tell us about that whole, how that thing happened.
See, when I, in Calcutta, where I had started my first few years of posting, we met a senior officer, if I remember, from Sikkim, Mr. Denzongpa, I think. So he told us the story that he was the first batch of Sikkimese people writing the UPSC. I think Sikkim became a part of India in the late 70s. So him and a lady who was then the chief secretary of Sikkim, and he was the chief commissioner of income tax in West Bengal at the peak of his career. So he was telling us that when he wrote the exam, he had no idea about taxation and IRS. They wrote the exam because IAS and IPS they knew. Right. So similarly, even for us, when we write, that is, I tried to find out a little bit, but there are close to 24, 25 services. So many times we fail to do the background check. But having said that, for me, and I would encourage people who, are, I should have said this in the first segment as well, try and find out a little bit more about the services that you're writing for, like, when I was getting interested, one of the first questions I asked someone was, okay, so, and I say this because for me, like the reward, I need to know the reward and I need to dangle it in front of me sometimes so that when I'm down and struggling, I remind myself, motivation. So I asked, what is the starting salary of an IAS officer? And the reaction was, Sorombinai, you haven't even written prelims. So that was the case. But, my point being that it's good to know. So similarly, for me, while filling up the forms, I knew that I wasn't made out. I mean, my temperament is not fit to be in the police as a cop. And so I never filled IPS as an option, despite the fact that by rank, I was getting IPS.
IPS, yeah.
So many people told me different things about that, like, like uniform service, and the fact that prestige and you have the bells and whistles to follow you around. I said, but that's me. And actually, I've seen people who have become DSPs or IPS not have it in them and did it because of societal pressure and actually suffer. I mean, worst case situations are there where they have taken their lives as well.
Yeah, that's actually unbelievable. That they weren't even meant to do that, but because of all the pressure, societal pressure, that they followed that path. I mean, clearing the exams was obviously their choice.
Yes.
But they were aiming for like IAS or like whatever it may be. But
just an illustration which every time you think about the UPSC, it keeps coming back to me. I saw it in a newspaper cartoon, I think. The fact that sometimes these competitive exams also, it's like you've lined up all the animals in the forest together and then told them that who can climb this tree fastest wins. So after being 10, 12 years in service, sometimes, I look back and think this is not the only way to be successful. This is not the only way to, find validation, and UPSC is not the end all. I mean, sometimes it's just an exam that you've passed, You shouldn't glorify, people shouldn't glorify, and you also shouldn't think so highly of yourself just because you passed an exam.
But yeah, you should definitely be proud of yourself for let's not like
I mean, I'm not
put
taking
it as it's not easy by any means. And I want to get into your job because we just discussed a little bit prior to this. So many interesting stories, but just take us through your journey and the different stories that we'll talk about. But let's sort of follow in order, and we'll start with you said your first posting was in Andaman. As soon as your first official job, your posting was in Andaman. So how was that? That's a beautiful place. That's all I know.
I actually took up the Andaman offer because they said for 6 months, if anyone wants to go, you can go down. So I took it up because I was unmarried. I was looking for, and work-wise, less pressure there. So Andaman is a great place. I ended up staying for a year. I mean, I extended the 6 months to 1 year. So I was there for 1 year. And I realized that in Andaman, they refer to themselves as islanders and outside as mainlanders. So 1 year was long enough for me to identify myself as an islander, So in the sense, see, the monsoons are quite bad there. For almost 4 months, the sea is so rough that most of the touristy things close. But September, October is when tourist season starts, and with December, Jan being heights of, packed with tourists. So that's when I used to walk in the streets and be angry at the mainlanders for coming and crowding my space. But I had a good time there. And I'll tell you one story from Andaman, which I remember, the vehicle which I used to call during weekends to go out, I was going to meet someone for lunch on a Saturday or Sunday. So I told him come and pick me up at that time. So he says today the vehicle has actually been booked for a wedding in the evening,
Okay.
So I told him it's okay, you just drop me to that place and then I'll get back on my own. So he said okay. So when the vehicle arrived, I saw that it was done up with roses and all these things. And in front, it says Dinesh weds Shilpi. So I had no choice but to sit. And throughout, like, people are looking inside to see Dinesh, and I'm sitting inside. So that was a good memory of Andaman, which I keep telling people.
What?
But work-wise, I didn't have so much to maintain, so I could cover that up, you know. And also for a fact that in Andaman, I had a Tamilian cook, and I've left behind a Tamilian cook who knows how to make chicken with bamboo shoot and a nice Naga fish chutney. So I have good memories of Andaman.
And you've left good memories there also for people. Moving on from Andaman, you went on to join.
I came back to Calcutta.
Oh no, Calcutta. Yes.
Actually, Andaman also is technically looked after by Calcutta as far as our department. So that was still a part of Calcutta zone. Then I spent a few years in service tax, but it was the customs posting. The first time when I went and worked at the airport. Right. That was quite a memorable posting. You know, for any customs officer, the airport is always a nice place to work. I mean, the airport, you know, under the glittering lights and the air conditioning, a variety of different departments and different people work there. You know, be it the airlines people, security people, people who clean, as well as passengers and, you know, all the shops and duty-free people. So there's a lot of interaction with other agencies. So that was one area where suddenly, instead of just sitting in your office and clearing files, you are pushed to interact and you are representing customs. So, you know, you have to be up to that mark. And also customs at the airport, a balance between passenger facilitation. You know, you have passed through an airport customs wherein you have seen white uniformed officers. So they basically look after the the passenger facilitation, your baggage and all that. But you'll find certain people wearing civilian clothes, but roaming about, you know, keeping an eye on the passengers. So that's the anti-smuggling part of it. So because the airport is also misused as a channel to bring in so many things, you know, and the airport is also one of the quickest, you know, you just have to cross customs and then you're off. Same day that whatever goods you're smuggling is there. So correct. High stakes. So it's interesting that way. It's been a balance.
Yeah, this is interesting. When we talked about this a little bit the other day, your stint in that when you're in the customs there, the stories about the Kolkata airport, like you were telling me a little bit, and I wanted you to share this with the audience. But more than the stories, I want you to, like, you know, you had some nice stories that I want to listen to. But I want to first talk about like the customs part a little bit, because a lot of people have issues with their packages being held up at you know, like, and then that's one thing. Another thing is, like, you know, you mentioned this in fact about like how the scopes and certain like, you know,
items which are frequently stuck in customs,
and which people are not aware that it's actually not it's actually illegal or not unless you have such and such permits. So just can you just touch on that a little bit about the whole customs?
All right. Okay. Since you talked about the scopes, just to get that out first, certain items which, because of ignorance, we end up bringing it, but it gets stuck in customs, is rifle scopes, you know, the ones which you put on a firearm as a telescope. As per Indian laws, the only persons who can bring it in through import them in are shooters who are registered with the National Rifle Association. So at any given point in time in Calcutta, I think more than 1,000 scopes are lying there because they have been ordered by someone who doesn't fulfill that criteria, right? And so that is one. Second, drones also. If you are to import a drone, you need specific license from DGCA, the Civil Aviation Authorities. And it's difficult to get that just for one drone. So many people end up, you know, ordering it, but leaving it there. Those remote control aircrafts, that's another item. So these are some of the common items which get stuck. But going to the first thing regarding parcels getting stuck, here also, just later on I'll touch on fake parcels getting stuck, because there are people who get duped in the name of customs officers, getting called that your parcel is stuck and please pay this much money.
Right.
That part, the Nigerian scam, as we know it, that is there. But normal packages getting stuck. See, even me, before joining, I didn't have much idea, but one of the things which most people forget is when you send something from outside to India, you have to protect the Indian market. Therefore, that's the basic reason why you have all these customs duties, right? So my auntie once called me saying that her sister had sent a carton full of clothes from UK here. I think maybe 15 garments, and it's stuck with customs, So I told her, "Arey, auntie, like, if your sister keeps sending you that, you can aram se open a foreign goods shop here, na?" So the limit is $5,000 worth of goods, 5,000 rupees worth can come in free through customs if it is a gift from a relative or a friend, right? So over and above that, customs duty will be charged. So that is one. Secondly, these days, so many websites to order from, I'm talking about international as well. So there the rules say that anything above 1,000 rupees, if the goods you're ordering, let's say some cheap earphones or something that falls within $1,000, that'll come through very easily. But anything above $1,000, there'll be a flat rate of customs duty, which is charged there. That is the reason why it gets stuck, because then those goods have to be checked with a list of what is the tariff for that particular item. Then when it comes through, you pay your postman the amount that was and these things are usually not mentioned on the websites, because their thing is to sell it to you. Once the money comes,
the headache is yours.
And also, just, I'm not the spokesman for customs also, I'm not protecting, but many times the goods are presented to the customs officer at a certain point, but on that tracking app it shows that with customs. It's the postal department also keeps doing things, and then finally it's presented to the customs, So many times the badnaam comes, but at the same time it's due to ignorance of the laws that we end up getting a lot of these things stuck. I'll also like to talk about the other side, the Nigerian scam part. I've had like educated people, call me and tell me that few weeks back I got a friend request on Facebook, and then we got talking, and then now they're saying that they have sent a parcel which is stuck in Mumbai customs, and you have to pay a certain amount and it'll come to you. And that amount obviously won't be so less also. Many times it's 1 lakh or more also, but they'll promise you that you'll get 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs or whatever high amount, right? And they'll show you all kinds of documents. But in all this, the basic fact you keep forgetting, that why would anyone give you that money? At the heart of the matter, greed is there. You just met someone online randomly, and then he wants to give his inheritance to you. But when you're in the middle of that, somehow your vision gets clouded, and I've seen like educated people fall for these. And
that's the it's actually quite unbelievable, like how to a large extent our people are quite gullible. We've seen it many times with different scams or different cases of people getting duped out of the get rich quick scams, and we've seen it many times. But I just want to touch on one thing, because a lot of the viewers, especially the guys, will be I hope you guys listen to this, because the scopes for the guns, if not for actual guns, but even for the air rifles and all that, a lot of them order. So now you know why they're getting stuck, because I'm sure you're not a professional shooter. And then even stuff like drones, which are very common nowadays, and the ones who are ordering it, and now you know the reason why they're getting stuck. So these are things that I hope you guys at least learn something, like I'm learning right now. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about was about the DRI, when your stories with the DRI,
Yes.
those were some very interesting things that you shared a little bit, but I want now get the details of, because you had some funny stories also.
Well, see, the DRI, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, is basically the main intelligence unit in the country to deal with anti-smuggling activities. After working for that year in the airport, I got picked up to join this organization. And DRI stories, I mean, many times when I share with friends, they keep getting amazed that such things actually happen. It seems very filmy sometimes. So basically, the kind of smuggling that you see presently, gold smuggling is one of the big things that you see. Right. All kinds of narcotics, right?
For sure.
There are some other kinds of items which I was not aware of. For example, betel nut, your dried supari getting smuggled. You have a lot of counterfeit items which violate intellectual property rights, IPR violation, duplicate mark, or
the knockoffs,
first copies.
Yeah, first copies.
So close to the original. And so many other items, just foreign currency, fake Indian currency, right? But gold is among the biggest items here. And see, for any kind of smuggling, it's because either one, it's banned, like narcotics, but for the other items, it's because there is some customs duty which you have to pay if you bring it through the proper channel, right? Betel nuts included. So for gold, at that point in time, for 1 kg of gold, the difference in price between India and, let's say, Thailand or Dubai market was almost 4 lakhs for 1 kg.
1 kg of
1
gold.
kg.
That's the customs. I mean, the
difference between the price after paying all the kinds
taxes,
of duties. Yes. So now smuggling that becomes lucrative because if you can just get in, and I'll tell you that there are so many innovative ways of getting in. I mean, start off with hiding it in the handlebars of a suitcase, melting it and getting it in powdered form. Recently, I saw pictures of some sort of paste. He had made it and painted it over his jeans, It's mind-boggling what people do. But the most amazing one, and it was my least favorite kind of case also, was when you hide it in your body, which means rectum kind of smuggling, Before this, I had seen in movies how, maybe mafia, Colombia and all, you swallow narcotics, but rectum concealment of gold was different level, and it's interesting. I mean, when the first time for me, like though I was in charge of that unit, it was the first time for me. So I'm half curious, half excited even, to see what happens. So maybe I shouldn't share details of...
Right, the exact... We don't have to get too graphic, but...
See, from the northeast area also, this rectum smuggling is mostly through the air route. But then you can get it in mostly from the land route as well. So here the amount will increase as well as the methods to hide it increase. Vary. For example, the ones which come from Mizoram or Manipur and actually cross through Dimapur as well, many times they are hidden in parts of luggage.
We're still talking about gold only, right?
Gold. So these days the handlebars of your trolley suitcase, that's a favorite place to hide them in, and I've seen the northeast, the carriers you call them, because their main role is just, they don't know the main masterminds, they're just paid
the
some
mules,
amount, mules. So they many times don't know what they're getting into also. For the money, of course, but economic crimes, that's one thing which they don't know, that you'll be spending time in jail.
And like you're saying, sometimes they're not even aware that they're doing what crimes they're committing. They know that they are doing something, obviously, because they're getting paid a certain amount. But
there was this instance when there was a guy traveling with his son, and he was carrying gold. So, I took him aside. He was a northeast guy only. I asked him like, why? And his reaction was almost like, it's not like I murdered someone, in a sense, it's an economic crime. So I told him, but you're going to go to jail, what kind of example for your son? And that, I mean, the day he was caught, he was sent to jail, so we had to make arrangements for the son, call people and do all that kind of thing. So yeah, awareness is lacking, basically.
Yeah, definitely lacking. Well, like on the same topic, but like on smuggling and moving closer towards home and like the Nagaland, in Nagaland and the Northeast, can you just share some stories about like what's going on? Because we do hear, like you mentioned, betel nuts also.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised to see a few seizures in the papers. Plus,
betel nuts is interesting. Let's talk about the customs part of it. Betel nuts, I think the duty is almost 100%. 100% of the value. Yeah. Okay. In order to protect the local market, right? So betel nuts from Indonesia, Thailand enter in through either from the Champai area in Mizoram or Moreh. And they come in through trucks, or sometimes if they can make it all the way to the railway tracks through Mizoram that side, Tripura and along that route. So it's interesting that when we catch them, the first thing for customs, for that matter, any kind of animals or plants that come in, you have to check whether for food, whether it's fit for consumption, and for animals and all, from the animal quarantine people, whether he's carrying any disease, etc.
Right.
So for the betel nuts, we check whether it's fit for human consumption. And guess what? In all these tests, it shows that it's already infested and not fit for consumption. So we ask these people, then why did you bring them in? You know, where is it going? Surprisingly, most of these go to central India, to all these factories that make pan masala. You know, you name the brand, yes. And I have seen myself opening those betel nuts, and you know, I mean, back in the day, I also chewed some pan masala, but after seeing that, like, it's horrible. I mean, it's the worst quality, and yet they're able to cover it up with the lime and
those are
tobacco.
disguised. I mean, in the sense, it's not like having a tamul where like you can actually see the betel nut.
Exactly. So I've been telling my friends that just you should quit pan masala. Really.
I mean, for those of you who are planning to quit or on that, I think this is a very good reason. First-hand experience from someone in that business who's seen what kind of products are being used to, maybe not for like 100% of all the products, but a large majority, I'm sure, will be using that.
Because it takes a long time
cheap,
to
right?
reach.
Also,
yes.
Exactly. What about other smuggling cases in and around Nagaland? In what are the main things? Drugs, obviously, being narcotics being one, and I'm thinking like animal poaching and
by the way, for customs as well as DRI, wildlife control act, I mean wildlife act, or anything that breaks the act, that is also part of our watch out. So on one hand, like products of animals such as the skin of the tiger or any part of the tiger, because in Chinese traditional medicine, they really go for everything, you know, every part. Certain things like the hair of the rhino, again, because the horn of the rhino, by the way, it's made of hair, so that's why I said hair. Chinese beliefs are there that this is good for certain, you know,
ailments and stuff.
But at the same time, even live animals I've seen, and strangely, these are not going out but coming in and making it into the homes of private collectors. Some people supposedly keep like mini zoos and these kind of things in their houses. So like some you know, prized animals, some small monkeys or certain kind
breeds of like exotic.
Yes, they know what they want, and that's how the demand and supply is there.
Would you have any idea, like because at one point I remember how famous these like geckos were.
Yes. Tokay gecko,
right, and the again the get rich quick scheme of how like Nagas are so fascinated with people who are looking around or even like trying to farm them, you know, and what would like a sentence be, or you know, what would like the punishment be for someone caught trying to smuggle one of these endangered species?
See, under Customs Act, there are certain things, but he'll also have to do time under the Wildlife Act. You know, Customs Act normally up to 5 years he could spend, right? But over and above that, he will have to serve time for breaking the Wildlife Act also,
which I'm thinking will be much more stringent. Or...
Yes, the forest people will.
Nah, that will be there.
Again, for our part of the country, many times when it comes to these kind of crimes, I think only recently that awareness is there. You know, you must have read on social media, some people posted pictures after killing a deer or something. It was not their intention, but somehow the authorities came to know, and so slowly I think that awareness is coming, that the need to preserve wildlife as well, which in our area it's lacking.
Yeah, definitely. I think awareness has to be done on so many fronts in our state, not just in regards to customs or smuggling, wildlife, so many different factors. Like one case I'll tell you is just like with the new 4-lane that's coming. I mean, the Chumukidima to town stretch is already complete now, and the one till Kohima is going to be complete anytime, I guess. But awareness programs has to be done from whichever department is concerned with the responsibility of doing it. Driving in your own lane, signaling, small things like that. Did you read the number? How many number of accidents had happened in the past 1 month? Do you guys? How many hundreds or thousands? I don't know. It was crazy, but like, how is that possible that so many accidents are happening when we finally have good roads and you know?
Yes.
So I feel like awareness on many different fronts we have to be addressed.
I also want to add the fact that counterfeit goods, like the first copies. This is something which we have seen. These violate basically the intellectual property rights. And what I've seen is like the amount of fake goods that come in. You're talking about watches, you're talking about shoes, high-end bags, it's just flooding the market. And what these people do is they put a lot of emphasis on the packaging. The packaging is as good as the original. So you and me, under the glare of lights inside a mall, you'll be easily deceived. You'll think it's the original and buy it. Shoes, anything I'm talking about. So, and one thing I found, of course, is that they also go for those brands which are widely bought. Like, for example, it might be difficult for them to do like a Chanel or Coach bag.
Very high end.
But maybe up to Michael Kors or something, they're able to do it because these are widely bought. So it's very, people can buy first copies without knowing them. And a lot of these e-commerce websites, without naming any of them, they are selling.
There are tons. It's for a fact. Like someone who's not even well versed in that area knows like it's happening. And I just want to ask you one thing. Like you've made it clear that it's being sold even in malls.
Yes.
So when you're talking about, because a lot of people do online shopping, just like a question throwing out to the audience, malls are being infiltrated by knockoffs. What's to stop that happening in the online market, which is so much easier?
Yes.
And one thing I would just want to ask you is regarding this: if someone is involved in this trade and they are running an online store, for example, that are selling knockoffs, what would sort of like the punishment be, or the
basically all these companies have people in the legal team who are experts at intellectual property rights. So for example, in Calcutta, when I was there in the airport, they would come and then they'll bring us copies of the original and what a knockoff looks like, give us catalogs that show us how to identify, because you understand that a custom officer in no way is an expert in identifying. In fact, the law protects the customs officer in case I allow a real a knockoff. It protects me because I'm not an expert. But they come and it is their duty to anything that needs to be destroyed. High-end watches, for example, which are all fake. They pay the price of whatever arrangements that need to be done in order to destroy them, because they would rather have them destroyed than flood the market and bring down their name, right? So you have certain teams, each of these high-end brands, but at the same time the reality is that shoes and clothes, even at some point the magnitude is so huge that they can't
it's
engage
like pick and
with
choose.
it.
They have to choose their wars, right?
So the higher amounts, they sometimes come and take action, but many times they also can't do anything about it.
Coming to GST, because now that's where you're at. Your current posting is as Joint Commissioner of Central GST. And this is something that I want to share because like personally, I told you this before. This is something that I've also looked at with some certain level of intimidation because I didn't know what it was. And because I couldn't comprehend like the exact nature of it, I was sort of very hesitant with it. And I think that a lot of other people, business people in Nagaland also who haven't registered have the same fear, or like they don't know what they're getting into. So with you being in that position to help us, and like it'd be really nice if you could just give us like a brief breakdown of what the GST is all about, something like in layman's without all the jargon, like like just break it down for us, the GST.
All right,
let's have a tax lesson.
What I'll do is as if I'm talking to my parents or maybe to a 5-year-old kid.
Right.
So therefore, just a disclaimer that I'm here as Sashi Wapang and not as the Joint Commissioner. So on Monday, don't come with a legal guy and say that you said this wrong. Huh? It's mostly so that we get to engage a little bit. And in the 1.5 years I've been here, I've tried to reach out to our young Naga owners of businesses as well to just come and have a chat. The importance of understanding the tax things, which many times I find that you are concerned about the profit of your business and you leave the tax aspect to your accountants. But many times they'll tell you only after the house is on fire, whereas it's important for you to have a pulse about the tax aspect as well. And my afternoons are usually free, so you can come to office and chit chat also. I'm free for that. Having said that, GST, let's start a little bit. I'll take a little time.
Please. Yeah, I'm curious to know.
Basically, the tax system in India is divided into two parts: direct taxes and indirect taxes, right? So direct taxes are those taxes which are directly taken from the person who's supposed to pay them. Income tax. Income tax, we Nagas don't pay, but in other parts of the country, income tax is payable. So it is directly taken from the person who is supposed to pay them. The other kinds of taxes are called indirect taxes, wherein it is not collected from the ultimate person who pays them, but from an intermediary. Let me explain. When you go to have food in KFC for example, you look at your bill, after the price for the burger and drink, niche you find GST, right? So GST is being collected from you as the customer, but being collected by KFC, and it's his duty to pay to the government, right? Therefore, it's an indirect tax.
Right.
Similarly, customs is also an indirect tax, because if you buy some foreign goods, you bought a foreign imported car, right? The person who imported it has paid the tax, then the customs duty, and then when you buy it, the price is adjusted so that in the MRP, the customs duty is already adjusted. So you as the customer, you're paying the whole price, but the customs duty has been collected by the government through the importer, right? So largely, these are the two kinds of taxes, direct and indirect. In the IRS also, you have two sets of people that look after this. So income tax guys are one set of IRS, and we guys, customs and GST, another side. Just aside, I'd like to, these are two different departments and each one does its own thing. But many times here, even my friends in income tax, they get questions on GST, and I also get a lot of questions on income tax to the point that now I can give some basic answers on income tax as well. But so now coming to GST, in the most basic sense, you've understood the KFC example, right? GST is something which, when you take registration, you're basically, the government is giving you the right to start collecting tax on the government's behalf, right? So you have to register with the government. Registration is the first thing. So when you register, you get a number, a certain number, and that number basically is giving you that license that you can start collecting tax on behalf of the government. So you continue with your business because you are charging the person whatever is your amount, right? Just over and above that, you are collecting the GST. The second thing you need to do after you've taken that GST registration, every month, the amount which you have collected paid to the government, right?
Every month.
Every month. And the third important thing, you have something called the return, a GST return.
Right.
See, I'll not use any jargon, but what I'll tell you is a GST return is basically a report of what you did that month. You have collected all the money and paid. So a report, basically, it could be all your invoices for that month. You know, it's a register of all the things that you sold that month, a report, basically. So GST in very basic terms is that you have to take registration, which gives you the right to start collecting on behalf of the government, right? Secondly, you pay every month whatever amount you've collected. And thirdly, you give a report to the government of what you've done every month, which is called a return. Now, back in the day, before the 90s, when in the 90s, liberalization, globalization, privatization, everything happened, right? Before that, we had this era called the Inspector Raj, where the government was so powerful that basically he was sitting in your shop or your factory and counting every item that was going out. So tax kind of very strict. But after the 90s, what happened was we moved into an era where there's a certain level of trust to the taxpayer. So the government is basically trusting you to give us a report of what you did that month.
Yes.
And only when I go through the return, I get to see and tally things. And if I find something not tallying, that's when I ask you questions or call you or ask for more documents. So we are in an era where the trust is on the taxpayer to report honestly every month, you know. So even despite this kind of simple layout, many times in Nagaland, what I've seen is people take a registration and forget about it. So now the problem is you have to remember the fact that the government now doesn't know anything what you're doing. You took registration because we are waiting for that monthly
report and their payments also, right?
So it could be true that you have not collected, you did no business. So you had no money to give.
Right.
But that report still needs to tell me that you collected nothing this month. You collected nothing this month. So basically, there are fines and penalties if you don't do that. See, because the ball has been put in your court to at least give a report that, okay, this month also I didn't do any business. But where you did business, you pay that amount on time and give us the return saying, this is my picture for the month. So many Nagas businesses, just for the fact that you did not pay it on time, which actually think of it, it is a crime because you collected the money and you did not give it.
So it's like you're stealing.
Yes. So there are jail terms for doing all these kind of things. Again, economic crimes, people are not aware. So if the amount is in terms of crores, 2 crore above, 5 crore above, the director could be arrested and taken to jail.
But okay, just one quick question on this. Besides the jail term and all, what would the, like, for someone who'd taken a GST registration and then sort of, like you said, just forgot about it, not paid attention to it, the fines will be piling up.
Yes.
What would a monthly, because you have to pay it every month or at least file your reports every month.
Yes.
What would a rough...
See, for a monthly failure to file your returns, the amount is 5,000 a month, the fine. So in a year, 60,000, 2 years,
interest.
And interest also.
Will be, I'm sure.
And for example, the money part, which you had collected and not paid, interest is heavy on that. Because you were supposed to have paid it on that
That's
day.
the government's money.
Yes,
and
you're holding it with you. So interest, so people get stuck in this.
Mm.
It's not just you taking registration and staying quietly. Even if you're not doing any activity, you have to keep reporting. So currently, I mean, I'll use this as the platform also to announce that there is a scheme ongoing by the government wherein earlier the 5,000 per month amount has been drastically reduced given the fact that COVID and difficulties in filing. So it has been reduced to 500. So a lot of taxpayers are now coming forward and settling, setting their house in order and getting that done. So I would encourage any taxpayers, and these are mostly the smaller taxpayers who are not aware, because the big ones you have hired some sort of accountant, right?
Yes.
But like I said, even young Naga entrepreneurs and owners of businesses, I would encourage you to take a certain interest in the tax aspect of it also. And like I said, please come and visit.
Right. This was actually you made it sound very simple, but never had the opportunity to hear someone speak on this like as simply as this. And I think this should have been really helpful for a lot of business people. Like you said, this especially for the smaller people. The bigger business houses always have the luxury of paying an accountant, like we said. But yeah, this was really helpful for me. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to get into one thing real quick, and this is something that I've discussed quite a few times before. You've watched some of the episodes, so you'll know. And this is on our Prohibition Act, the Nagaland NLTP, Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act. Now, just to set the record straight, for this discussion that we're going to have, we're going to leave aside all the other aspects of it. We're going to leave aside the ethical issue, like we can debate that on forever. We're going to leave aside the health issue, the spurious liquor that's flowing. We're going to leave aside the obvious fact that it's not working, it's not being implemented, and that gives way for the rise of bootlegging empires and such. We're going to leave all that aside, and we're going to just talk about the economic angle of what we're missing out on with the NLTP Act in place. And I mentioned this actually, the numbers that some people were just working out on was like, it can be anywhere in the region of like 500 crores revenue annually for now. I remember I just went through numbers a long time back when I was just like ranting about this on Twitter. It was coming anywhere in the, region of like maybe like say 500 crores. I've now found out I was a little wrong, but yeah, anyway, I'd mentioned that we're missing out so much on revenue from, the prohibition being in place. And I had said that I wanted to get to the bottom of this. And when I approached you for the podcast and you said yes, and we were just discussing some things we can talk about. And when you mentioned this, I was like, perfect. Because now we have some hard numbers, and I think it's going to give a nice insight for people to, actually hear facts. Because what I was saying was just random, not random also, but just very rough estimates. So give us the breakdown of what kind of amounts are we talking about when we're talking about like the prohibition being in place? What kind of revenue is that stopping from us potentially earning as a state? And a lot of people don't understand or can't grasp when we talk about like 100 crores or 500 crores. It's you can hear the number, but you can't grasp like what that could actually be doing for the state in terms of like helping with this department and the budget or whatever it may be. So, but let's first start with like the raw numbers of, from a revenue aspect, obviously.
Let's look at currently I think the states which have prohibition in India, among the big states, Gujarat, Bihar, and then of course Nagaland and Mizoram, I think.
That's it. There's just 4 states that have.
There are smaller pockets.
Okay.
I think Lakshadweep and
but like major states.
Major states, and the big states being these two, Gujarat and Bihar, right? At the same time, there are certain states who tried it before and failed. Mostly the big South Indian states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh. I think Haryana also tried once and failed. You can imagine if Gurgaon was right. So.
Anyway.
I'm no expert on it, but since you had asked from a revenue perspective,
right.
I also looked at it. If you look at the big states, the amount they earn from the tax on liquor. See, again, just let me explain a little bit how the revenue is collected, right? For a state, the revenue collected is divided into 2 parts. The revenue which is from your own collection, means from the state, and the revenue you get from the central government. Because there are certain taxes like customs, right, GST and all this, which go into the pocket of the central government, and then it distributes it as deemed fit among the states.
Right.
Each states collect their own revenue, which includes a part of GST as well. But in most of the big states, the excise duty that is collected off from alcohol is a big number. Like I looked at some of the big states, and West Bengal, Maharashtra, UP, in some cases it comes out almost up to 25,000 crore. which is more than Nagaland's total budget,
Entire budget,
mind you,
right.
tax from alcohol. And also just remember for a fact that each state levies its own tax. In a sense, you can choose how much the tax rate should be, how low. In different states, what happens is that each state gets to decide what the tax rate should be.
Right.
See, these items like alcohol and tobacco, these are called sin taxes, basically.
Sin taxes,
right?
yes.
So in West Bengal, the same item would cost more because the government there believes that the tax rate should be higher. So again, the revenue becomes higher when the tax rate is high. Places like Goa, very low for tourism purposes. So the same brand or bottle would cost different in different places, right? So remember, 25,000 crore is what's coming from. So then I started looking at then what is the percentage per state. So on an average, most states are earning 10 to 15% of their revenue from the liquor, right? I tried to look at international examples. One of the good examples is the US. They had prohibition for, I think, around 13 years, 1920 to 1933,
30s,
something like that. And surprisingly, there also the amount earned through revenue from alcohol was 14%. So it falls
Even
within
during that's crazy.
this is like back in the day, 1920s. And see, we are obviously not talking about the ills of alcohol and all
We're
that.
leaving that aside,
But strangely, even in the US, one of the reasons why it failed and it came back was due to revenue reasons, economic reasons, because it coincided with the Great Depression that was going on in the 30s,
Right.
And you needed jobs, you needed more money, avenues to do that. And I read somewhere that then Roosevelt won the election that year with lifting off of prohibition being one of his main election agendas
on
also. So
yes.
it's funny that, and they have tried, it's failed. It's also a fact that during that time, one of the famous gangsters, bootleggers, Al Capone and his empire flourished because it's a fact that those who want it, you'll find ways to do it, even in the lockdown, right? So if you take that into account, 10 to 15%, and I tried to look at Nagaland as
our
well,
state numbers,
our state numbers. Nagaland, almost 90% of our revenue is from the center, right? So from that remaining 10%, if we do the math and look at 15%, it comes to close to around 200 crore.
So I was not so far off. I mean, it's big numbers, but
No, I don't have a ready-made data
I know.
It would have been good if I told you that health and family welfare was getting this much or TAFMA was getting, but you get the point, right?
I know,
this 200 crore could do a lot to.
Of course, for the people that don't know, I mean, we were just discussing this prior to the show, but it's unfortunate that we couldn't get the exact numbers, right? But just for the people who don't know, but 200 crores is it's a lot of money that can be used for our state in whatever way they deem fit, our leaders and all. But definitely for a state that is, like you just said, so dependent on the center for like up to what was it, 90% of our 90% we're dependent on the center, and we're generating barely 10% of our own to cover our own expenditures. So looking at that from an economic angle, it almost I don't understand why people can't understand that also. And that debate it's a very long debate. Like if we get into it again, whether you're for or against, it's gonna be a long debate. And like I said, for today we're gonna leave out all the ethical, the health issues and all that. But I'm glad you could bring this on, because I had said it before and I wasn't able to get around bringing the real numbers. But potentially this is not facts, but potentially just on some calculations, we could be earning anywhere close to in the region of 200 crores annually.
And if the tax rate is increased,
and
be...
if the government strongly feels that we should be taxing higher, then that could grow higher. Of course, our revenue could grow higher. Okay, so that's one thing I'm really happy that we could get out of the way, because as usual, I'm gonna say that the NLTP Act should be removed at the earliest, but not much power in my hands. So I think we've come to the end of this discussion. We've had like for me, it was a very good learning experience. Like, you know, your whole UPSC journey, your very simply put but very effective way of making us understand the GST. I got to understand that, and also especially that the icing on the cake was the numbers for our NLTP Act. Looking at it in an economic angle.
Can I ask you one or two questions? I mean, can I turn the tables and ask you a question or two also?
Sure, you can.
Yeah. I know that music and sports, these are two of the things that
that's my thing.
So,
right.
I'll ask you two questions then. One on music.
Chalo, let's...
For music, do you think the time has arrived for someone in Nagaland to do music full time and feed himself and his family? Full time music.
Full time. It's actually like not such a straight up answer, in the sense, you know, like it won't be fair to just say yes or no, because there are definitely cases we have the perfect examples of, you know, the musicians like Nise, Alobonaga, the Tetsu sisters, who are 100% living off their music as, like, you know, as a legit career. So I can't say yes or no like specifically like that, but in my opinion, what I think is that there is definitely, this day and age, you can make a living of music, solely of music, like, you know, a decent living of music. And if we get into, like, you know, if we get into the debate of this, the whole what ifs, and there's too many things to go into in detail, but a few things I'd like to mention is that you know, with MTF, Music Task Force, which is now obviously TAFMA, with that coming into the picture from the early 2000s, you know, that has helped to a large extent, regardless of what people say, and they may criticize
We
it
must
for...
be the only state having this kind of a music.
We are, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we are the only state that has a specific task force set up just for promotion and development of music and the music industry in our state. So it's a good thing, and regardless of, I understand people's criticism and all also, but that has helped to a large extent. Mm-hmm. Prior to this, we never had people, you know, while growing up, we never had musicians who were living solely off their music. Right. Besides the people who are teaching, maybe. Setting those people aside, the rise of, like, you know, the musicians, like I mentioned, the Nises, the Alobos, it's given people also hope. It's given parents also like an example or a role model that they can see their child following in their footsteps. So it's picking up. I don't want to put myself in the spot and say exactly like this, but since I am running a music label, right, and like we have artists that are signed under us, confidently can say that it's the time is here for us as musicians to make a living of their own, but it's definitely not easy, not an easy task. That's what I'll say. Yeah.
Good answer. I'll ask you something about sports also, you know.
Sure.
With the recent Olympics as well, and you know, Manipur and Nagaland just next to each other, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these guys have, like, in the in football teams also, national football team, a lot of Manipuri guys, and then they're bringing back medals from the Olympics. Why the discrepancy between us and them?
There's so many factors for this, actually. Like, I am now actually with the Athletic Association of Nagaland, and I'm getting to sort of understand the hardships that, you know, it's gonna take to get us to that level. But prior to this, and to some certain extent, I still do believe that the blame game, I've said this in a previous episode, let's not go the blame game first of all, because everyone is to blame. You know, we start from the government, the department, the ministers, the government, the department, the associations, various sporting associations, the coaches, the players who are not like disciplined. They're not they're not dreaming hard enough, and unfortunately there's not much to dream about when the situation is such. And all the way down to the public also, who I keep repeating this, but we still look at it as a hobby and just like a pastime, sports. And unlike music, which in the recent times has at least gotten some role models or some heroes to look at and say like our child can become like that. In recent sporting like history, we don't have that besides the Dr. T.O.'s, but those are the days of the old,
Right.
And like successful stories, we need more of those role models or the heroes to emulate. But yeah, like I said, there's so many factors, and one of the main factors I'd say is it's with the people also. It's with the people, because like I recently visited, not recently, but a couple of years back, there was a Northeast Olympics, and I went with the Nagaland Athletics Association, like the team. And what I saw in Manipur was like, first thing, obviously infrastructure. Infrastructure was, I'm saying out of this world, but I'm talking about a Northeast state,
Right.
because what do we have to compare it with what we have in our state is nothing. So their Olympic Bhavan or their Olympic complex had because they've hosted the national games before, so they had every stadium for everything, rowing, the velodrome for the the cycle, that the race that they have, everything.
Wow.
But besides the infrastructure, one thing that impressed me the most was that obviously they have their sports college also there. I interacted with some athletes, Manipuri athletes, who were training early morning, at night, everything. And these people were not even participating in the Northeast Olympics, but they had the discipline that they were going to be training 365 days.
Wow.
So that kind of commitment and like dedication that they had is like something that really impressed me. Because in our state, I don't want to put all the blame on the athletes. Obviously, it's not entirely their fault, but I guess it's a mixture of so many things. But I'm gonna sound pessimistic, and that's what I don't want to do. But yeah, I see positive changes coming up soon. Our athletics association have got some few things lined up. A press release recently came up that we're gonna be doing a lot of activities. Our annual calendar, with like a national event also coming soon to Kohima, like with a cross country. More details will come out about that. So yeah, I guess it's a mixture of a lot of reasons, but professionalism, lack of infrastructure, lack of professionalism, lack of infrastructure, lack of good policies in the sports department or with the government. Combination of everything.
You've taken a very complicated thing, but given a very rounded answer. Thank you.
Okay, now that the tables are turned. Yeah, I mean, I can go on in detail because this is what I love, but we'll wrap it up here. Before we wrap it up, before we get to the final thing, the segment, just you had a lot to talk about, but it was mostly about your professional life and your. I want to know, because I've seen you post stories of you playing the guitar, which earlier you said was like a form of meditation also. Just tell us a little bit about what you like to do to relax besides playing the guitar. What are some of your hobbies? What are some of your the passions, the little things you enjoy in life?
Well, right now, spending time with my kids is actually, of course, it's draining, but it's something that I really enjoy, watching them grow. I have 2 sons. I've always wanted to be a hands-on dad. And just getting to see that, that's something which, of course, they're at this stage where they need us. And how old is your son?
Turning 4 this December.
He's older now. He's spending time on his own, but one is yet to crawl, and so we still have that stage to go through. I do spend a lot of time even on social media. I try and make it productive, to some extent. Social media has been a form of actually getting news also. The smartphone has really changed the way we consume media. So I rarely watch TV, because even the Euros, having to put my son to sleep, it was convenient to watch it on Sony Live and on my smartphone,
Right.
Netflix has changed the way. So I admit the fact that I spend a lot of time on my smartphone as
Online,
well.
yes.
Yeah, and I try to balance it out by doing something productive out of it. So guitars, I used to read a lot, but I think in the last few years that has gone for a toss because of other kind of things. I find cooking therapeutic.
Okay. I'm horrible. I can't forget horrible cook. I can't cook.
For me, because the Calcutta years before getting married, weekends used to be. I was living like a bachelor, so
Right.
I had a lot of time. I used to just enjoy doing that. It's not like I cook very well, but just that time spent cutting vegetables and doing stuff, I find that nice. So basically doing things alone also sort of recharged me. I guess I'm a little bit more into that, slightly more introverted.
But that I like that you touched on the social media thing and how we're actually coming full circle because we started with that and we're gonna end it off on that note. But thanks to social media, I could connect with someone like you and found myself a great guest for the Shoutout podcast. And
Thank you so much for having me, because I think compared to your other guests, I'm not really a known face, and yet
no, we're not gonna do the modesty thing here. But yeah, very grateful that you could join. We're gonna wrap it up with you giving the message. You know what this is, like a message to family and friends, message to friends who you've lost touch with, and third to the Nagas in general, everyone watching.
Right. I'll look into the camera.
You can look into this camera. And
for friends and family, what else is there to say but thank you for all the support through the years. For people that have lost in touch along the way, at the core I'm still the same person, and for whatever reason we've lost touch, I'm all over social media, so let's get back in touch. Message for the Nagas, I really don't have like a crisp, I wish I had, but what I'll say is we all want to live extraordinary lives. We all want to be doing extraordinary things, and yet many times we forget what we have in our hands. I read this poem recently on Instagram that talks about the fact that remember what the ordinary is. If I can do the ordinary thing about raising my kids to be decent human beings, if I can have a good relation with my neighbor and not always see him through tribalistic lines, if I can give due respect to my elders, if I can do these ordinary things properly, the extraordinary will take care of itself, and someday down the line we'll realize that what seemed like ordinary lives will actually have been something very extraordinary. That's my message to the Nagas.
That was a very UPSC message. Very well put. Obviously, wouldn't expect anything less. But thank you so much, Sashi, for agreeing to come on. And what I want to quickly say is that we discussed this and we couldn't talk about this, but your eventual goal, or not goal, but you do wish to come back and serve in Nagaland, on deputation with the government. So I really hope that happens sometime in the near future. And
Thank you.
In a selfish way, come back, and we need people like you to help us with our state. And
I'll just say something regarding that. Even for me, like many times as a tax guy, I'm called to be a fixer of things, in to apply band-aids here and there. But my dream is also to be actually someone who knows the laws properly, and to be able to set your business, when there's an operation done, then you're healed of that disease and you actually walk free to do things. Because most of the time, for taxmen, or for that matter government servants at large, you're called just to make amends here and there, how to go around the problem.
Fixing
one of the things I would like to do is not be a quick fix kind of guy,
the temporary thing, but
give you long lasting kind of solution. So thank you.
With that being said, now you have to come back. You have to come back and say things. Anyway, thank you so much once again. We really appreciate you. And that's a wrap.